I'm Dr. Craig Chalquist. Thought I would knock out a quick video on not only how to present different kinds of information in the workplace, in academic settings, others, but also what not to do. I have done a lot of presenting, but what's probably even more important is I have been an audience member in countless kinds of presentations. And if there have been mistakes made, I've seen them all. And some of this is material I share with my students when they're getting ready to go to conferences and present, or they're defending a dissertation or what have you. And I did some of this in the corporate world as well. So, one thing to realize up front is that presenting in a way that's clear and evocative is part of a whole suite of skills that are called soft skills these days in the world of work. And soft skills are the ones that help you communicate and make you relational and easy to work with. So they include things like creativity, problem solving ability, emotional intelligence, social intelligence, empathy, things like that. And there are business organizations and experts, I'm thinking of Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, many others, who say that hiring managers are actually looking more for people who come in with soft skills these days than with the hard skills that the specific jobs require, because people can be taught that part. But the soft skill part is sometimes harder to teach depending on what the skill is. So presenting is one of them. And I wanted to go over a little bit about how to do this. And I'll mention also I have a video on demand in Vimeo that I'm selling on 25 soft skills for the workplace if you're interested in more on this. So I'm going to list 8 things not to do when you're presenting. And if you do these and you cut them, your presentations will improve immeasurably. Guaranteed, or your money back, right? They won't rust, tarnish, blister, crack, or peel. So cut these 8 things and you will be a much better presenter. And then I'm going to give you 4 things at the end on suggestions on how to improve as well. So, number 1, these aren't in any particular order. It's off the top of my head, but stuff I've noticed over the years, things that speakers do that they don't need to do, right? So, do not fail to warm up your voice. Now, here's the reason. A lot of us, especially when we're under pressure, speak from here rather than from here, from our whole thoracic cavity. And so, especially when I'm tired, I notice that sometimes my voice goes up a little bit because the muscles right here are tighter. So before I present, I usually will read something or I'll talk to somebody or whatever just to get my voice warmed up, because I'll want to present from my whole internal cavity and not just my throat. It'll have better reach, it'll sound more relaxed, it just goes better. So there's exercises I do sometimes with my students too, where we move the focus of where speech is coming from up here down into the rest of your body. And why not use your whole body to resonate when you speak, right? So try warming up your voice before you speak. If you have a case of the nerves before you present, that can also help. So try it out. Number 2, please do not show up unprepared. I don't know how many times I've sat in presentations where someone is going through their lecture notes and they say, "Oh, well, they're out of order. I don't know how that happened." And it's like, well, if you had checked before you went on, they wouldn't be out of order, right? So the whole audience has to watch you fumble while you try to get your act together. Don't subject people to that. It looks unprofessional. Now, sometimes tech support stuff comes up, and one thought about that. I've gone to places where I've presented and the tech doesn't work. So you have to insist on testing it. And usually places that you go will insist on it anyway. They'll say, yeah, you need to come in and hook your things up and test the mic and all that, if there's a mic. So do that. Make sure that you get a chance to test everything. Sometimes it still fails. So you might want to have a plan B, or maybe just some amusing anecdotes for the audience to pass the time while the tech people get your stuff going, right? So that's number 2. Be prepared. Be prepared when you go up there. Number 3, two mistakes to avoid rolled into one. So don't go up there and you look at your notes if you have notes or your slideshow or whatever, and then just decide to wing it. 99 times out of 100, it will come across as incoherent and spontaneous in a negative way. So I don't recommend doing that. Stick to your plan. Now, there might be points at which you do improvise a little bit, and that's fine. But what I don't recommend doing is going up there and chucking the whole program out and just winging it, right? Because you like the sound of your own voice or whatever. So don't do that. The other extreme. So don't go to an event with your notes too detailed, because then you will not be able to do an adequate presentation in a way that's convincing and evocative, because you're too busy trying to read what the heck you wrote down. So some suggestions for using notes, and whether that's online or in person or what have you, if you have to use notes. So just nail the key points in a few words and trust yourself to know the material well enough that you can fill in the blanks. If you're presenting something and you don't know it well enough to not have it all written down, you might want to rethink doing that presentation. Do you really have the knowledge that's needed in order to do this, right? So for notes, when I bring some, I just have bullets or 1, 2, 3, 4 or whatever, just the basics. I practice beforehand so that I don't run over. More about that in a minute. And if I'm using some sort of a podium or even a screen sometimes, I will make the notes in a larger font. And so at a podium, for instance, I may be going down the list of notes and I put my hand on one of them so that I know where I am. And I'm mostly looking at the audience while I'm presenting. But now and then I'll look down and move my hand so that I don't lose my place. So that's one way to do it. Make the font large, don't bring too many. That brings us to number 4. If you can possibly avoid it, don't read to your audience. Now, sometimes you can't avoid it. Sometimes at work, someone will say, we want you to read, specifically read a report, right? Or in the academic world, we get asked all the time, come and read a paper, right? And you have to. Well, even when you do that, look at the audience. And if you're new at this, which I was at one time, I've actually gotten out of this habit now, but what I used to do, based on feedback I got from people, and that's always a good thing to get critical feedback on how you're doing, I would put in my notes directions like, at this point, look at the left side of the room. At this point, a paragraph down, a few lines down, look at the right side of the room, right? So the reason for doing that is because if you have a lot of people in front of you, especially, or if the audience is scattered from here in an arc all the way over to there, you want to make sure that everybody feels like you're talking to them, even if you don't look directly into their eyes because they're sitting too far away. So it's necessary and engaging to be able to look at different sections of the audience and give them the sense that you're talking to them. So that's a very good thing to do. Also, in terms of looking around at the audience, you might pause now and then to concentrate on particular groups of people just for a moment. And if you scatter that, then again, it'll give a sense that you're engaging with everybody. So try not to read if you can possibly avoid it. I was in an academic conference last year, and there was a colleague who was also there presenting, and he did the whole presentation like this. And he read the paper, and he didn't look up once, and he read it in a monotone. It was devastating. So try not to do that. More about tone in a moment. So another common mistake where slideshows are concerned, if you're presenting with a slideshow, too much text on the slides. The text should just be points that stick in the minds of the audience and remind you of what to cover next. If you're putting big blocks of text on slides, you're not only forcing the audience to divide their attention between you and what's on the slides, but it just feels heavier. It limps somehow. It feels again like they're being read to instead of just, being presented to. And also, if you include quotations that you think are useful, pare them down. No more than a sentence or two, right? So don't put too much text on the slides. Another thing about slides, this is number 6 of our 8. So edit your slides. I don't know how many times I've looked at slides that have really basic typos on them and errors of grammar or diction or what have you, right? So have someone else look at your slide deck before you present it, or go through and really carefully edit it, because it looks unprofessional when you do that. So eliminate that. Number 7, tone. So again, 2 things to avoid, right? 2 extremes. So one is total flatness, blah, 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 right? Don't want to do that. And at the same time, what you don't want to do is fake manic sounding cheerleading where you're, oh, what's up, oh, what's up, oh, what's up? And the audience is like, this guy just started, I'm already tired. The balance between the two seems to be this, that you show up showing your enthusiasm for the topic. I really like presenting, and I like teaching people how to do it. So hopefully you're registering that I like this and I'm enjoying doing this video. So that's the spirit, I think, that you want to have the audience experience with you when you show up for a topic. It should be something that interests you. And if you're presenting something that isn't, number 1, ask yourself, why am I doing this? And number 2, try to make it your own. Try to figure out some aspect of it that you actually like, and it will make a huge difference in your presentation. We're on number 8 now. So here's one that I see a lot. You don't want to gallop. What I mean by that is people who spend way too much time at the beginning of their slideshow because they haven't practiced. And then they notice the time and they say, oh God. And they start speaking really fast and trying to cram as much in as possible. Don't do that. You're losing everybody when you do that, right? There's only so much information people can take in. So I could have made, for instance, this video 10 times longer and included a bunch more things, but I thought 8 is good, and even 8, I could have made it 3. That probably would have been even better. So don't gallop, which means on the other end of this, when you're preparing the presentation, don't cram too much in. You want that last slide or that last paragraph or whatever it is you're saying last to make the big point that you want people to go away with. One takeaway, one call to action, as they like to say. What is it you want people to do differently, think differently, feel differently, or perceive differently? Build your whole presentation around that and have it surface throughout, but really make it a point at the end so that people go away with that, right? So that will help you organize your presentation. And like I said earlier, practice it, because I see this all the time with dissertation defenses in particular, but it can happen with any kind of presentation. You put too much in, you get too enthusiastic about one part of it, like explaining why you think it's cool, and then you run out of time. All right, so don't gallop. Now, I've got 4 more suggestions for you that aren't necessarily about what not to do. So one suggestion, learn the needs and interests of your audience to the extent that you can before you show up. And even some of the metaphors that community likes to use, and make them your own too, and build them into the presentation. You have to be careful with this, because if you misuse them, everybody will know that you're just doing it as a technique. So you don't want to do that. But see if you can find out some of the recurring themes or images that come up with this group. What is it they want? What would really excite them? Find that out. Suggestion 2, test, if you're doing it online, test your wireless signal and the signal strength. And I won't go into how. You can look that up online and find out bunches of ways to do that. But speed test in particular, you want to have the bandwidth to do it, right? Third, begin with some sort of an anecdote that shows your interest in the topic. I kind of did that for this video. I mentioned early on that I've been in all these audiences where I've seen people doing different kinds of things with presenting. That probably doesn't constitute a full-on anecdote. Something like a mini story, to get people on the same path as you, and to show them I'm a human being. This is why I'm into this. Then they'll actually trust you more too. And then lastly, for online presenting in particular, but it applies across the board, check your look. And when you're doing it, for instance, by Zoom, which I'm not right now, there's a little square that shows up that indicates how you look to the audience. You need to look at that. You need to check that, right? And I don't mean perfect, show up looking perfect. I never do. I mean, there's always something wrong going on in my videos, but you need to at least do the basics and not be presenting. Like, how many times have you shown up and you feel like you're in a criminal news story because there's so little light in the room that all you see is a silhouette? It's like witness A is talking about what happened when they busted the crime organization, So don't do that. Don't be like down here doing your whole presentation like this, or like off to the side where people see half your face and nothing else, So just try to sort of center yourself in the picture and have enough light so that people can actually see who is presenting, right? That kind of thing. That's what I mean. So I hope this was helpful, and I want to mention again, I've got that video on demand, soft skills in the workplace. It covers a bunch of soft skills that you need to know if you're looking for that. And I hope this was helpful. Give me some feedback about whether it was, and take care and good presenting.